Good evening, Larry. How are you?
Yeah, turning down the TV here. Yeah, I'm good.
You're wearing a familiar-looking shirt by the looks of it.
Oh yeah,
I reckon
I have one or two.
just one or two, or one or two of the same brand.
No.
Of the same design.
I've got about 17 of these.
17, yeah. I was
Yeah,
going to say it's your signature piece.
different patterns, different looks.
Okay, and does each one signify a feeling about the current state of events, or do you wear one per day?
Well,
Like, is it Thursday shirt or Friday shirt?
No, they're all essentially camouflage. Try to
Okay.
hide out. So,
Nice.
are
But you
you are you still in Africa, or are you out of Africa?
No, I'm even more in the bush than I was. We've been doing some safaris, and the internet is a little bit temperamental, shall we say?
Yeah.
But I'm hoping it holds. Might be a bit laggy, but hopefully we can persevere. So, take me through what you think is going on right now. Are we seeing a peace deal signed or not? Because Trump said Hormuz is not going to be controlled by anybody, and negotiators should take their time, basically. So, seems to be like he's just trying to jeopardize his own peace deal.
There's not going to be a peace deal. You know, there's no basis for it. Iran's demands are clear. U.S. demands are sort of clear, and they certainly don't marry up. Iran's demands are pretty simple. They want immediate relief from sanctions. They want their frozen assets returned. They want the war to stop in Lebanon and in Gaza and in the West Bank. Israel's got to stop its offensive operations against the Palestinians. And it's going to retain control of the Strait of Hormuz, and we'll charge, and let's call it an environmental fee, a resort fee. They're not going to call it a toll, but for all practical matters, it's a toll. And within that, the U.S. withdraw its forces from the Persian Gulf. Those are not negotiating positions for Iran. Those are firm positions. They're not going to change them. So you have to ask yourself the question: is Donald Trump willing to accept that? One morning he says yes, and the next moment he says no. And he was just on television saying the exact opposite. He's not going to accede to any of the demands of Iran. So no agreement. No, particularly if they even say if it's an MOU. I know that Pakistan is working really hard to try to get something signed. And last night Al Jazeera said, "Oh, they've reached an agreement." No, they haven't. And so it's just people just need to sit down and look at what Iran has said, and then ask yourself the question: is that just strategic posturing on the part of Iran, or do they really mean what they're saying? I maintain they mean what they're saying. They're not just making something up out of whole cloth.
I get that, but I'm seeing here that apparently the Iranians have opened Isfahan airport the first time in 80 days. So why would they do that if they expect more conflict?
Well, they may not expect to be immediately attacked. See, there's still limitations to what the United States can do. We're not seeing any of the kinds of the best the United States is doing right now militarily is flying what are called combat air patrols over a particular, and they're flying over both the western portion of the Persian Gulf and the eastern portion. And so far, they did have that one dust up the other night where they fired on 2 Iranian boats. Claim they were laying mines. That's ridiculous. They weren't laying mines. You don't lay mines at the mouth of your own damn port. But Iran as well was firing back and shot down another $35 million Predator drone at least, and a couple of others. And it came close to shooting down an F-35 who managed to escape at the area. So, right now it's on a low boil. It hasn't heated all the way back up, but Iran is still they're trying to restore some normalcy to their activities. So the United States doesn't have any really good options.
It doesn't really. I mean, I think that the US has never been in a worse position, realistically. The Trump administration just seems to think that they can continue the same approach, right, Barry, and just maximalist demands, badger, coerce, demand, and somehow that will incentivize the Iranians to come around. But that's not how it works.
Right.
I'm kind of curious what you make of these airstrikes, these explosions that were a couple of days ago. I know we were meant to chat then, but like, what's your assessment of that? Is that America just lashing out because they're desperate to try and gain some leverage or something, and the Iranians just let it go?
I'm not sure which, the chicken or the egg question. Did Iran fire first at U.S. aircraft that were violating Iranian airspace, entirely legal under international law? And then did the United States fire back and go after the ships or the boats? They're boats, not ships. Or did the United States first fire at the boats and then Iran retaliate? I'm not sure what the sequence was, but it turned out to be minor. Not for the 4 Iranian sailors killed. It's not minor, but in the overall scheme of things, it didn't escalate. So there's clear efforts, it looks like, on both sides to avoid escalating back to the level that it was pre-April 7th.
Pre-April 7th. Okay, interesting. But like, I don't know, I'm just trying to make sense of them. Why would the US do that? Why would they strike? Is this self-sabotage? Like, it just seems like a warmongering obsession of the Trump administration.
Well,
right?
you can't rule out the influence of AI. So, but from a targeting standpoint, and you've got AI feeding intelligence into the intelligence officers, and if they comes in and says, "Oh, these ships are laying mines," and say, "Okay, we're going to go stop them," instead of somebody stopping to think and say, "Okay, wait a second, that just because AI says it's happening doesn't mean it is happening," and because what ship is going to lay mines at the entrance to Bandar Abbas, which is the port? That'll just bottle up more Iranian ships inside. Like I said, that it just doesn't make sense. So we don't have the full explanation, but if I had to guess, I would say it was likely AI generated. Bad AI at that.
What does that tell us about the state of US decision making? If AI is having so much of a influence.
Yeah, well, it is. I got this firsthand Monday from a just retired intelligence officer, U.S. military intelligence officer, and he went through it in chapter and verse with me on how a year and a half ago, they really the targeting officers were not relying on AI. They are now, and AI comes in and flags, oh, you got this development, this event, this threat. And instead of them always taking time to verify it, to double check the threat, is it real? A lot of times they just act on the information, and then it turns out later it was mistaken.
So Trump claimed during this press conference, I mean, not that I ever watch these anymore, Larry, but he claimed a few hours back that he had achieved regime change. This is regime change, he said. He also claimed U.S. negotiations are doing well, even as he signaled they were not ready to move forward with those seemingly very progressing and successful negotiations. So, I don't know. How loaded a question should I frame this? How out of his mind is he?
Yeah.
Is there any decision making in the White House at this point, or is he too busy looking at the UFC stage that's being built on the front lawn?
Yeah, at this stage, he's got about the attention span of a 2-year-old, 3-year-old. The Iranians state television put out a statement saying that there was a draft of a preliminary unofficial framework for a memorandum of understanding between Iran and the U.S. And then the Trump White House came and said, that's not true. Oh, okay. So they dismissed that. But then, when you go through Trump in detail, what he's saying today, he's all over the map. And part of this is, you have to attribute it to his own mental decline. That he's not the same person he was 10 years ago, not even close. He is. It used to, Robert Barnes, this is the most salient observation. I always enjoy listening to Robert, but he was Trump's attorney within the last 10 years during his first term. And he said back then, if there was an issue like, should I attack Iran or not, Trump would call up, a dozen or more people to talk to him, different people with different perspectives. He'd seek out actually opposing views. He wanted to know what people thought. That was his approach to decision making. Now he's not doing that, not at all, and that's what makes him now dangerous, because he's locked in and he's only hearing one set of voices from the neocons, from the uber Zionist side of the equation, and has such limited information, he becomes dangerous.
Well, does he ever have full information? I mean, limited information makes it sound like someone's,
we do know he has been given full information in the past, but he's ignored it. Apparently he was told that the likely outcome of this, if they attacked Iran on the 28th of February, what the likely results were, and he ignored it. Now, he's not the first president to do that, but on top of his other, I think he's actually got some other mental issues that he's struggling with.
What do you think he has? What have you ever figured out? Like, he has that thing on his hand where it's blood clotting. They claim it's to do with injections not going right or whatever, looking for blood, I think, or something.
Yeah,
it looks like he's been having some weird shit on his skin.
Yeah, old man. Hey, once you get above 70, you start getting splotches and marks on your hands and stuff. So yeah, but it did, it was definitely bruised. It was, there'd been some, whether that was from a shotgun bat or what, I don't know. But the, look, he's clearly described as by a number of physicians exhibiting the signs of someone with prefrontal lobe dementia. And go ahead.
What's the difference between that and what's the difference between that and Biden? Like, 'cause a lot of people got Sleepy Joe Biden and his dementia or something.
Biden's was more, I don't think it was prefrontal. That his was more classic of, just being forgetful, not being able to remember, and losing critical thinking skills. With this prefrontal lobe, though, you start losing that function. You lose empathy. You engage with what's called confabulation, where you create stories of things that you think are real and happened, and they didn't happen at all, but you genuinely believe they did. So, Trump is exhibiting those kinds of signs, and it is worrisome.
It's beyond belief at this point. I think there's a little speculation just what Rubio and some of the others are thinking or doing behind the scenes, to try to get this deal through, even when Trump doesn't fully even know the situation. Kind of curious what you think about the broader administration right now, because it seems to be you have the core Trump entity, right? Hegseth seems to just follow him or whatever, and a couple of others. But Rubio is obviously trying to always walk it back. Vance seems to have fallen out of favor amongst some people, who's always being seen as the runner-up or the successor of Trump and MAGA and all this. But yeah. I saw an article the other day saying that he's really unpopular now because he's been unwilling to support the Iran war, and he's just generally pissing people off, which surprised it took this long for people to recognize that. But I don't know. What's your take on MAGA as a whole right now?
Well, MAGA's in disarray, and it is crumbling. That's again one of the signs of sort of the mental decline of Trump, that he has been so vociferous in attacking people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens. So he's just the people that were supportive of him they've turned, and he's not at all controlled. He speaks it with uncontrolled anger, and it directed at many of these people. So what we're looking at here is with Trump is he's not fully functioning, and the people around him, they're walking on eggshells. So it is that's why we keep seeing this up and down, back and forth. Oh, we got a deal at hand. Oh, there is no deal at hand. Oh, there's a deal at hand. And I just, I wrote last night based upon an intelligence report I received from somebody who is, I call them a knowledgeable source with access to the information. It's a sort of a euphemism for saying somebody who's involved with the negotiations. And the picture they're painting is that they're nowhere near close to an agreement. They've identified what the main issues are, but in terms of the United States being willing to make concessions to give in to the Iranian position, they're not willing to do that. Until they do that, there's not going to be a solution to this war.
Well, yeah, but it's absurd, isn't it, to try to think that the Iranians are going to move on some of these things that are so much more existential for them than they are for the US, right?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, what's to say? Can you share a little bit more about what this source of yours has been saying? Like, what are the main issues that they've recognized but are divergent on, apart from Hormuz?
I mean, they're all, from immediate sanction relief. The United States says, okay, we'll start removing sanctions once you prove that you're going to do X, Y, and Z. And Iran said, no, hell no, we're not doing that. We've done that before. We did that under JCPOA, and you guys changed the rules. And so we never did get sanction relief. We don't want sanction relief up front. Same with frozen assets. A significant portion of that money is money that was paid to U.S. defense industry for during the time of the Shah of Iran, and the Shah fell. But Iran had already paid this, billions of dollars to the West, and instead of returning the money, they kept it, and they also kept the weapons. So, U.S. is going to have to come up with a time and, figure out how, what are they going to return on that. Another portion of the funds came out of oil sales, or revenue generated from oil sales. So, but again, Iran says that's not negotiable. They want the resources back. They're going to enforce a fee on any ship that transits the Strait of Hormuz, and Trump just said, "Oh, hell no, they can't do that." So he's saying they're not going to be allowed to do that, but I don't see, how you stop them, because Iran can do it, and what's the United States going to do? Sell ships in there to try to take it over? They'll be sunk.
I'd love to see what you would advise people on the inside. Actually, I'll just ask that as a question now. What would you be telling people on the inside? What would your advice be? Yeah. Recommendations?
Well, if it was with Trump, I would portray this as we have secured an agreement, a permanent agreement with Iran to never build a nuclear weapon, which was our objective all along. So right away starts redefine what your objective was. Now, could they get that? Could they get that kind of agreement out of Iran? Yeah, they could. But it would mean that Iran would still retain enriched uranium, but they'd be willing to. I think they'd be willing to enter a deal in exchange for guaranteed security and the end of these Israeli attacks. Sure, but the United States can't guarantee that. That's part of the problem.
Yeah, on that point. So what I find insane is just what's happening in Lebanon right now. I don't know if you've been following it as much.
Yeah.
The Israelis really seem to be hammering hard in the past few days, in the past day, let alone actually. And it almost strikes me as though they are trying to sabotage the deal or really get the Iranians so enraged that even if we were willing to agree with some concerns of the US or whatever perspectives, we're not going to because of the way things are happening in Lebanon. What's your thoughts?
Well, Israel's good at the air. They're terrible on the ground. They're trying to make advances on the ground, and they keep getting attacked and chewed up by Hezbollah. So, that's not going to be settled. They're hoping that they could coerce the Lebanese government into collaborating with Israel to wipe out Hezbollah. But, the Lebanese, I think, recognize that going after Hezbollah would be a death sentence for them. So this is, and as it's proving right now to be very difficult for Israel on the ground. Yeah, they can drop bombs from the air, but that creates more rubble, creates more hiding places for fighters. Not that Hezbollah fighters exist in these neighborhoods that the Israelis are blowing up. The Israelis are destroying just because they can.
But I mean, where does this leave us with the US and the Israeli relationship then? If Bibi Netanyahu is willing to go to this extent to derail the situation.
Well, it's not just Netanyahu. I think it's even if Netanyahu is out of the picture, I think Israel will still be of a mind to continue the operations as they have been. So that's not going to bring an end to this, unfortunately.
Well, okay, and where does this leave the international community then? If there is one, 3,200 Lebanese have been killed because of these renewed military operations. Nothing's really happening other than the destruction of Lebanon and the enragement of the IRGC.
Right. I mean, let's face it, the West doesn't care. We've been hearing about Lebanese getting killed for 51 years. Started in 1975. So, they've been going on for 51 years. What's another dead Lebanese? The world does not care, unfortunately. But I'm just saying that they are that callous.
So I'm seeing a report here that Donald Trump threatened to bomb Oman if it concluded that they did some kind of agreement with Iran. Despite the Omanis being incredibly indispensable as negotiators, mediators during US-Iranian negotiations in the past, Trump's threatening to bomb them.
Yeah.
Should we just bomb the whole Middle East then? Just carpet bomb the whole thing? Why not?
Yeah, that's his new plan for winning friends and influencing people. I'm going to bomb you. I'm going to rob you. I'm going to rape you. Be my friend. Hey.
Well, I asked that because I thought it would act as a good contrast to my actual question, Larry, which is there was this report that Trump had basically demanded Saudi Arabia and one other country to just go along, recognize Israel, do the Abraham Accords, right? He just demanded it.
Right.
What is that? Well, he's so desperate. Clearly, this is my opinion, and then please, share yours. But to me, it's such a desperate play by Trump to try. It looks all fine. Excuse me, on the surface, it's all the US is in control. It's directing the initiative. It's got the initiative. It's directing the trajectory of talks and momentum. But he's demanding Saudi Arabia, especially, to recognize Israel because that's his crowning achievement of his past presidency, and he wants to consolidate it this time around because he knows how much of a screw up this is and he needs some kind of win. I don't know. Is that what's your thoughts?
Well, he's already achieved Richard Nixon's status. Richard Nixon, in the modern era of presidents, held the lowest approval rating at this point in his presidency, and now Donald Trump has matched. Trump has matched Richard Nixon. Not a good sign. That's not a record you want to have. Trump can, he's so insulated, and they keep convincing him that, oh man, you're wildly popular, you got great support. These people that don't support you, they're just a minority. They're not the real Republicans. So yeah, they tell him enough lies, he believes it.
So what do you make then of the IGC's comments then? So just reading it here, they did say earlier that unlikely because a renewed war with the US is unlikely. So it's interesting that they said a renewed war. So they don't really think they're in war anymore, or do you think they're being polite about this? But they said renewed war with the US is unlikely because of, quote, the enemy's weakness, but promises to make Iran's southern territory a, quote, graveyard for aggressors.
Yeah,
I
think they've adequately or accurately assessed that the United States is not in a position to continue this war, and to do so in a way that's not going to cost the United States a lot. Part of the problem, the cost-wise, is these weapon systems, Tomahawks and JASSMs. As those get used up, there's no ready replacement, and you further weaken the U.S. position. I think it's better for Trump right now to cut bait, just walk away, call it quits, take the humiliation. But instead, I think he's going to try to stick with it. And at any moment, this whole thing could erupt again into a full conflagration. So that's one thing we've got to be worried about.
Now, I started off my conversation with you by referencing the markets. Now, I don't know if you like talking about economics as much.
Oh, yeah.
A man of markets trades.
Markets are completely disconnected from reality. I mean, it's just it's astonishing. Yeah, I have a PhD comprehensive field in international economics, so I understand a little bit.
Larry, man of many talents. So okay, so why has Brent gone down by 3.2%? This is
market manipulation. Yeah, look,
the Trump administration still.
Yes. It does not make sense. And I had lunch 3 hours ago with an oil trader, a guy that's made his career off of trading oil, and he just said he's never seen anything like this. It's just step back and ask yourself, or take note of this. Never in the modern history, let's go back 200 years, never have we been in a situation where 20% of the world's oil supply is now cut off or gone, where 10% of the world's supply of liquid natural gas is gone off the market. And when I say gone, they're not sitting in ships ready to be offloaded. Those have already been emptied. So you don't have a bunch of ships filled with oil sitting around ready to be emptied. You've lost 44% of the world's supply of helium, which is a critical commodity for making computer chips, among other things. Urea and sulfur at a rate of about 25%. Those all have been cut off. So, the basic economics I understand is when if I got 10 people and I have 10 apples, I can take care of everybody. If I got 10 hungry people and all of a sudden I only have 7 apples, I got a problem, because if everyone's going to have some apple, we're going to have to carve it up in a different way, but it's going to be a reduced supply. So whenever you get this kind of reduction, it's going to cause a contraction in the economy. So at a minimum, at a bare minimum, you're looking at a global recession, an economic recession that most countries will be in debt. They won't be able to, they have difficulty making, budgets. So this is serious. And yet, in spite of all of that, the markets are pretending like, oh yeah, the things are good. Oil is good. Those are July. The number you're looking at for Brent and for West Texas Intermediate, those are for 2 months down the road in July. Yeah, if you think that this system will be up and functioning normally in 2 months, I would offer, I'll become your investment advisor. We'll lose money together. Yeah, it's just.
Have you got a bridge to sell me, Larry?
Yep. Get the Brooklyn Bridge is available. Cheap price too. Make you a deal.
Really? Yeah, I've got London Bridge to sell if you like.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so this is the markets. The markets don't make sense. The actual price for oil, if you're buying it, in Africa, if you're buying it in Singapore, it's probably closer to $140, $150 a barrel at least. And yet, through this artificial manipulation, oh yeah, well, it's $93. Oh, it's going to be below 90. Oh, the price of oil is coming down. Things are great. And you're looking around. Are we pumping more oil? No. Do we have more oil tankers coming out of the Persian Gulf filled with oil? No. Well, how about that liquid natural gas? Is that coming back in? Oh no, that's going to take maybe a couple of years to fix.
Years to come back on. Well, the Qataris just shut it off. It's gone.
Yeah.
What I love about this is that people don't seem to understand that you can't just sort of keep energy going, right? There's been people who are like, it's fine. You've got to constantly keep, especially in Siberia or the Russian pipelines, right? You can't just turn it on and off. It's an active, continual pipeline and set of systems, which shows just how ignorant they are. But one of the things that people have argued a lot is that this is worse than like 1973 oil crisis because it's a supply side shock, right? So not only are the impacts a lot longer, but they're also much, to your point, I think you basically inferred it, much harder to tell, right? It's much harder initially to tell the impacts until we're so far in. Like, for example, it's a small example, but in the next few days, the UK public are going to get bills. They're going to get their price for the second quarter. So how much it's going to have gone up since the war in Iran occurred. So, like, how do we mend this? I guess is what I'm trying to get at. It's
well, there's got to be a diplomatic solution. There is no military solution, and the diplomatic solution is going to require the United States to eat some crow. It's going to have to make some concessions it doesn't want to make, but it will have to make them if it wants this to end. And then once that's ended, then you're going to get the start of the flow of some of these commodities back online. But we still don't have a good assessment internally on how much physical damage was done to the sites that produce these elements. Is it just a simple matter of flicking the on switch back on, or is it going to take, in some cases, 2 or more years to rebuild a $1 billion plus radar system?
Yeah, but to build on that further, there's also the fact that the price level now doesn't really go down, does it?
Right.
Ever since COVID and Ukraine, the price level of energy, food, whatever, has never really gone down to what it was in late 2010s. I use the English example. That was just because I think it gives context to people. So the average household in the UK is now going to see their bill rise by £220 a year, which is a lot for, struggling households given the cost of living crisis with everything else going on. So I really wonder just how far this can keep going, how much the pressure can keep mounting, and why the United States government seems to think that they can get away with it.
Well, they think they can get away with it because they've gotten away with it so far, and you just naturally say, "Hey, I've done this already, so it's not a problem." The full effects of inflation have yet to hit, but it creeps up across the board. This is much like the story of the frog in a pot of water on a stove.
Perfect analogy.
When you turn on, the water starts heating up. He doesn't realize he's going to get cooked, and it's only when it's too late that all of a sudden it gets too hot to bear, and can't get out, and you die. So this is where the United States is at a crossroads. It's trying to deal with this as a strictly military diplomatic solution situation without understanding the economic ramifications of this massive shutdown. We saw oil back during the COVID crisis get up to $150 a barrel. And there wasn't a disruption. You didn't have a 20% disruption of the supply then, like you do now. And then when you add on all the other losses, there is no way this economy does well as a result of these shocks. No way.
But then what's how to put it? There seems to be a real concern among some about what happens to OPEC then. I mean, not that you care maybe, but is this an end? Are we seeing an end to these sorts of lobby groups, these advocacy groups that certain countries join, the GCC states? They're all going to just go off on it alone, or we're going to see a greater split of certain along the more ideological lines?
Yeah, well, OPEC makes sense if you got oil flowing. But when there's no oil flowing, OPEC has no power to set price because its failure to control. In the past, it could dictate prices of oil by controlling the actual supply on the market. And you can't do that now. If anything, it's the price of, prices are going to be more difficult to control. Up to this point, the United States has been able to mitigate some of the price rise by releasing its strategic oil reserve. But they're running out. That reserve is getting drawn down, and when it hits zero or close to zero, then all of a sudden prices are going to start spiking back up, and there's really nothing the United States can do to stop it. So this is, look, we're looking at a global recession. And I don't know, have you seen any difference in prices in Africa for gas? People talking about that?
Yeah, no. Malawi actually had a really interesting conversation with a former official of the Ministry of Economics or Economic Affairs. I'm not sure what because each country has a different designation or title for their ministries. But he was telling me that prices have gone up by nearly 80%, or whatever, 180%, sorry, because Malawi has a particularly bad situation. It's a landlocked country, so they're entirely dependent on their neighbors for certain goods, especially Mozambique for trade, cross-border trade and exports and so on. And so the fuel costs, our fees, they said they're not going to change them because I was doing some safaris whilst I'm here, and obviously you use a lot of fuel because you're driving around in a 4x4 around rocky terrain, and it's pretty unpredictable. And they said they're literally having to hike prices for customers who are coming in tomorrow or the next week because the viability of it is that bad. That's a relatively lucrative business in the safari industry, in the tourist industry. So heaven forbid what it's like for the average Malawian person who's, I think 90%, someone told me, is below the poverty line, but they still require fuel for fishing boats, for fire, for day-to-day activities, right? So no, it's pretty bad here. I've heard it's even worse in South Africa in some ways, given the government's corruption and dysfunctionality. So
I wish there was we could see a genuine opportunity for a peaceful exit from this war with Iran. But I don't see it. The Iranian demands are clear. I think the Iranian demands are quite appropriate. But the United States, this isn't about nuclear, a so-called quest by Iran to get a nuclear weapon. This is an excuse. The nuclear issue is simply a Western excuse that both the United States and Israel want to use in order to destroy, to destroy Iran. And I don't see anything happening that's going to make that less likely to occur, to take place. Again, the presence of enriched uranium, that's an excuse for attacking Iran. That's not the reason. Iran at this point, they've entertained. In fact, this is one of the things that Trump said today that shows you that this, he's not serious about negotiating. He's asked about what happened if Iran stored its nuclear enriched material with Russia. Trump said, absolutely not. That's not going to happen. Not going to allow that. So, that is showing ridiculous inflexibility on Trump's part. That's the kind of deal he should be willing to take in a heartbeat. Particularly get the Russians and Chinese involved with this, if the goal is really to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. But that's not what the issue is. The issue is that the Iranian state, the Iranian Islamic Republic, is something the West can't tolerate and won't tolerate.
If you enjoyed it, I think the show's authentic. It's clearly not too polished. We have a bit of personality here and a bit of mistakes, but I think that's why Larry likes coming, and he's invited some or suggested it to some of his other guests. So anyway, do check out some of the other videos. I've posted an interesting one yesterday on the situation with the Strait of Hormuz and oil with Anis Al-Hajir, who has been on Marius as well as mine a few times. But we'll see you all soon. I'm actually going to jump on another podcast now and talk about probably Ukraine, Russia. So maybe see you there. But otherwise, have a good evening, guys. Thanks for sticking around. And we'll be back with some stable internet very soon.